Okay. I call the 2,382nd meeting of the Milwaukee City Council to order. This meeting is being held in person at City Hall and by video conference. The public may participate in this meeting by coming to City Hall or joining the Zoom webinar. The meeting is being broadcast live on the city's YouTube channel and Comcast Cable Channel 30 within city limits. There will be opportunities for the public to speak during this meeting. If you would like to address council, you may come to City Hall. If you are interested in speaking, please let staff know by filling out a yellow comment card for those at City Hall or emailing ocr@milwaukeeoregon.gov for those on Zoom. When it is time to take public comments, staff will monitor the comment cards, email inbox, and Zoom participant list and chat. We will take comments in the order that they are received and seen. Again, written comments may be emailed to ocr@milwaukeeoregon.gov. Spanish translation services are available upon request. The public is asked to request translation and other meeting accessibility services at least 48 hours before the meeting. Contamos con servicio de traducción al español cuando sea solicitado. Se pide al público que solicite servicios de traducción y otros servicios de accesibilidad para reuniones por lo menos 48 horas antes de la reunión. Translation services are also available in other languages. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The City of Milwaukee respectfully acknowledges that our community is located on the ancestral homeland of the Clackamas people. In 1855, the surviving members of the Clackamas signed the Willamette Valley Treaty, also known as the Kalapuya etc. Treaty, with the federal government in good faith. We offer our respect and gratitude to the indigenous people of this land. And before we get to our announcements, the city manager had one of her own.
I have an announcement.
Yes.
Emma, can you come up for a minute? Thank you. I know, yep, just grab a seat. Oh, look, he has a nameplate for you. So I just wanted to tell people who are watching on air and to make sure all of you have a chance to welcome her. This is Emma Sager, and she is our new assistant city manager.
Thank you so much.
Do you want to just say a couple words about you coming here?
Sure. Do I hit push or do I just talk?
Just talk.
I just talk. Okay. Well, thank you so much, Ann, Mayor and council members. It's so great to be here. I'm honored to work for the city of Milwaukee. It's not the first time I have worked in the city. 5 years ago, I had the distinct pleasure of being on the consultant team for both the Climate Action Plan and the Comprehensive Plan. And I simply have been in love with Milwaukee ever since. And so when this opportunity came across my desk, I couldn't not apply. It is truly an honor to be back serving the city. And I look forward to working with all of you and all of our community members. Thank you.
Well, thank you and welcome, Emma.
Thank you very much.
And we've already had her in meetings and events. Day one, she went on a tour with us, so yeah. Okay, so now our announcements. The next Letting Library lecture series takes place tomorrow, June 7th at 6 p.m. with special guest Jim Bernard, Mayor of Milwaukee from 2001 to 2009, and Carolyn Tomei, Mayor of Milwaukee from 1998 to 2001. The program includes a special presentation by Councilor Robert Massey and a mayoral history lesson by City Recorder Scott Stauffer. You can join this event in person at the Letting Library, on Zoom, or watch it later on Comcast Channel 30 or YouTube. Milwaukee's garbage and recycling collectors annually provide a curbside pickup for large bulky items that do not fit in the weekly collection containers. The event occurs on the second and third Saturdays of June, depending on your home address. This year's collection dates are June 10th and 17th. Please reach out to your hauler directly with questions regarding eligible items or other concerns. For more information, visit www.milwaukeeoregon.com/bulky waste. And I will note that Waste Management sent out cards this year. I had not seen that before, but that was nice to get that. Learn more about what a watershed is and what you can do to improve the water quality in one at Watershed Discovery Day on Saturday, June 10th from 9 a.m. to 2 p.m. at Kellogg Creek Park. Kick off the day picking up litter with Solve around the park. Follow your very own Watershed Discovery Day passport to multiple family-friendly booths to discover how you can contribute to the healthy streams, protect wildlife in your neighborhood, and win prizes. Collect a passport stamp from each booth for a bonus giveaway. Save the date for a community-led gathering to celebrate, reflect, and amplify Black voices in the city at this year's Juneteenth celebration on Saturday, June 17th from 11 a.m. to 3 p.m. at Water Tower Park. Also save the date for this year's Pride celebration on Saturday, June 24th from 10 a.m. to noon at Scott Park, which is next to the Ledding Library. This community-led festive gathering to celebrate Pride Month will include food, activities, booths, and more. For more information about each of these events and others, please visit the city's homepage at www.milwaukeeoregon.gov or call 503-786-7555. And I will note there are 2 other events this Saturday, in addition to the Watershed Discovery Day. There's the cleanup that's second Saturday of every month at Minthorn Springs, and this is the last one for the summer. We take a break. We do them second Saturdays of every month, but we do take a break in the summer. So this will be the last one until September. And there's a lot of clematis that needs to get pulled so that the native plants that we've been planting there can thrive. So that is from 9:30 to noon at Minthorn Springs, which is on 37th behind the Planet Fitness. And the other is that there is a history tour, a walking tour of downtown Milwaukee led by an architectural historian, and that is from 10 to noon on Saturday. It is a ticketed event, and you can get more information by going to visitahc.org. AHC is Architectural Heritage Center, which is a Portland-based nonprofit. Again, visit ahc.org/walking tours. Any other announcements anyone has before I move on? Okay. So we'll go to our Pride Month proclamation. So I want to invite the Elston Power family to come up and join us. And they have lived in Milwaukee for over a decade. They started in the Island Station neighborhood as renters and then bought a house in the historic Milwaukee neighborhood. Karen got her feet wet as the neighborhood chair in Island Station. And in 2014, she and I both ran for council for the first time. She only stayed with us for a couple of years before moving on to the state legislature, where she served 3 terms as our state representative. And now she's been sucked into the swirling vortex that is the governor's office. So they recognized all her talent and her problem-solving skills. And I don't imagine Salem is the most fun place this month. But anyway, it's great to have her here. And her wife, Meg, is a longtime teacher, coach, and now a principal at a school in West Lynn. And their 2 lovely sons, Grady and Finn. So they are going to introduce our Pride Proclamation.
Well, Meg and I both didn't have any scripted remarks. I also noted that you are scheduled to go till 9:30 tonight, so we'll try to keep it brief since it's 93 degrees outside and this is not a well-air-conditioned room. It's an absolute honor to be before you tonight. The mayor read my service to the city, so I don't need to do it again, but it continues to be an honor to be Milwaukee's first out city councilor, and then later our first out state representative, and not the last on city council, and hopefully not the last for state representative either. It has really been our joy to raise our boys here. And we come to you tonight to commemorate Pride Month at a time when, our state government is not functioning because of our commitment in the state to LGBT rights, reproductive health, and more. This is no small thing. So I just really wanted to soak up this moment before you all and your commitment to equality for our city. The city of Milwaukie stepped up and was one of the first in the entire county to participate in Portland's Pride March, followed by the Sheriff's Department. And when I first ran for office, there was more than one person in this city who said, I thought about running too, but I was afraid of what it would mean for me and my identity and how that would be weaponized against me and my family. So I know that we have had people who didn't run because they were afraid. And unfortunately, we're back nationally in that space again, where families are being forced into really hard decisions on behalf of their kids, especially. So I'm just really excited to be here with you all and our family. And Grady said he might have something to say afterwards too, because he's never been able to speak at a city meeting or a meeting with me, though you've come to lots. Pam just reminded us that she used to take care of you as a baby when we went to neighborhood meetings, which is pretty great. But just thank you so much. I'll turn over to Meg.
Move the mic, yeah.
Thank you. I also didn't prepare anything because there's 4 days of school left, and that's where my head is right now. But I am honored to be here, and I'm proud to live in Milwaukie. I'm proud to be a Milwaukie resident. I'm proud of my lovely wife for all of the service she's provided. I did do a stint on PSAC just to correct the record for the future. I love raising our boys here. I feel welcome everywhere we go. I love proudly displaying our pride flag and our little Milwaukie pride sign in our front yard. And it's just a really awesome community to raise our kids in. And I'm honored to be here. And I think when I look outside of Oregon, I get scared for my community, but I just can't express how grateful I am to live in a place, a state, a county, a city that values what our family looks like. So thanks for having us here. And I think I might be here next month because my boys have never been this quiet and focused on something. So maybe we'll just come every month.
Every week. I think could be
Okay.
There you go.
Twice a month, even better.
great. You want a third night?
Yeah,
Okay,
okay.
great.
Do you want to say anything to the mayor or anybody else?
You're welcome to talk, Grady.
I'm proud to have 2 moms.
You're proud to have 2 moms. You should be.
Thanks, buddy.
We're proud of you.
Do you want to say anything, Finny? You want to tell your joke?
Well, he showed it with his gear today. So
Then
he's
why
got the gear on.
Dude, why are chickens so funny? Get in my alley.
He won't do it. It's too much. Okay. Good job, buddy. He has a great joke that we're working on. So when you see us at events this
Then why
summer,
are chickens so funny?
He's too shy right now.
see, it's okay.
He's never been.
When you see us out and about, ask Finn why chickens are so funny, and maybe he'll tell you. It's a joke.
Why chickens are so, okay. I'll
Well,
try
thank
to
you
remember
again.
Thank you.
Wait.
If one of you want to read the proclamation, you can, or I can read it, whichever you,
Why don't you go? Why
it's going to be up, yeah.
don't you go ahead?
Okay. Whereas the fight for equality continues for lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, queer, questioning, intersex, asexual, and other historically marginalized members of our community, and the responsibility falls on all of us to form a more inclusive and equitable society. And whereas June 28th, 2023 marks the 54th anniversary of the Stonewall Uprising, 6 days of demonstrations sparked by the targeting and arrest by police of gay, lesbian, and transgender bar patrons in violation of their civil rights, an event widely recognized as the beginning of the modern gay rights movement. And whereas history has failed to properly recognize the role of the leaders of the Stonewall Uprising, including Marsha P. Johnson and Sylvia Rivera, transgender women of color who helped spark this movement. And whereas in 2000, President Bill Clinton declared June to be Gay and Lesbian Pride Month to commemorate the Stonewall Uprising. And in 2009, President Barack Obama expanded the commemoration by declaring June to be Lesbian, Gay, Bisexual, and Transgender Pride Month. And whereas, despite the progress of recent years, LGBTQIA plus Americans continue to face discrimination and new attacks by state governments and other political figures on the legitimacy of their human rights, including their very right to exist. Now, therefore, I, Lisa Beatty, Mayor of the City of Milwaukie, a municipal corporation in the County of Clackamas in the state of Oregon, do hereby proclaim June 2023 as LGBTQIA plus Pride Month in Milwaukie and in support of our LGBTQIA plus family, friends, and neighbors, and to proclaim that love is love, you are valued and welcome, and your city stands with you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, you guys are welcome to as many council meetings as you want to come to. We'll let you know if there's something particularly fun.
Come back sometime.
Or time off for time served.
We'll be here till 9:30
Right.
tonight.
Sleep over at City
I know,
Hall.
Thank you.
All right, come on, buddy.
All right. And next, we have our other event of the month, the Juneteenth Proclamation. And that'll be introduced by City Council President Desi Nicodemus.
Thank you, Mayor. I have a little prepared statement, so I'll read that. Juneteenth, also known as Emancipation Day or Freedom Day, is an annual holiday celebrated on June 19th in the United States. The holiday commemorates the emancipation of enslaved African Americans and marks the day when news of the Emancipation Proclamation reached the state of Texas in 1865, more than 2 years after it was issued. Juneteenth holds significant historical and cultural importance as it symbolizes the end of slavery in the United States and the long overdue realization of freedom for African Americans. It serves as a reminder of the struggles and the resilience of those who were enslaved and their journey towards liberation. Over the years, Juneteenth has evolved into a celebration of African American heritage, achievements, and contributions to society. It is a time for reflection, education, and community gatherings that honor the past and inspire continued progress towards racial equality. Recognizing Juneteenth as a national holiday has been an important step in acknowledging the nation's complex history and promoting inclusivity. By commemorating Juneteenth, we acknowledge the ongoing fight for social justice and equality, while also celebrating the rich diversity and cultural tapestry of America. As Juneteenth gains broader recognition and significance, it serves as a call to action to address the challenges that persist in achieving racial equality and to work towards building a more just and inclusive society for all. And you can read the proclamation. Yeah. No, you can read it. Thank you.
A proclamation for the commemoration of Juneteenth as an annual celebration of Black African American liberation. Whereas Juneteenth is recognized as the end of chattel slavery in the United States, and whereas President Abraham Lincoln first issued the Emancipation Proclamation effective January 1st, 1863, declaring enslaved people in the Confederate States to be legally free. However, that proclamation could not be enforced in lands under Confederate control. On April 9th, 1865, Confederate forces surrendered, effectively ending the Civil War. On June 19th, 1865, Union soldiers arrived in Galveston, Texas, bringing news of the president's order freeing enslaved people 2.5 years after it was first decreed. This day has since come to be known as Juneteenth. And whereas Oregon's constitutional ban on both slavery and free African Americans laid the foundation for generations of economic hardship, exclusion, and discrimination against Oregon's Black African American community. And whereas through other systems of oppression such as sharecropping, Jim Crow, exclusionary and destructive housing and transportation policies, denial and disruption of voting access, and mass incarceration, the plunder of Black bodies and Black wealth continued past slavery and persists to this day, affecting the physical and mental health, safety, and education of Black African Americans. And whereas despite these obstacles, Black African Americans in Oregon have been and continue to be dynamic and vital community members and leaders within our state. And whereas Juneteenth has been celebrated in Oregon since 1945, when Clara people moved to Portland from Oklahoma to work in the Kaiser shipyards and introduced it to her coworkers. And whereas the city of Milwaukie and the Oregon State Legislature recognized Juneteenth as a legal holiday. Now, therefore, we, the City Council of the City of Milwaukie, a municipal corporation in the county of Clackamas in the state of Oregon, do hereby recognize and proclaim Juneteenth, June 19th, as an annual celebration of the past, present, and future of Black American liberation and those who continue the work to realize that liberation. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. With that, we will move to community comments. This is the part of the agenda during which council will hear community member comments regarding city business. For those in person who wish to speak, please submit a yellow comment card found on the table just outside the door. If you are on Zoom, please use the raise hand reaction to alert staff you wish to speak. And when instructed to begin, click the microphone option to unmute yourself. If you are calling in through Zoom and would like to make a comment, dial *9 to raise your hand. You may also submit a comment via email to ocr@milwaukieoregon.gov. Before you make your comments, please state your name and city of residence for the record. If you would like the city to follow up with you, please submit your contact information to ocr@milwaukieoregon.gov. As council has other business items on the agenda this evening, speakers will be limited to 3 minutes each. Because information provided during community comments may be new, the city manager will respond at the next council meeting to those comments that require follow-up. Before we begin, is there any follow-up from the May 16th community comments, Ms. Ober?
No, we haven't had community comments for a couple of meetings.
Okay. And I know we have one person here who wants to testify about one of the items on the consent agenda, so not at this juncture. Do we have anybody online?
I see no speakers on email or online. Nobody on Zoom has raised their hand. We did receive 2 comment cards for that item that you just referenced.
Okay, great. All right, then we will move on to the consent agenda. Tonight's consent agenda includes minutes of the City Council May 2nd, 2023 work session, May 2nd, 2023 regular session, May 9th, 2023 study session, and May 16th, 2023 work session. A resolution making the following reappointments to city boards and committees. Joshua Freeman, Jeanette Owen, Samantha Swindler, and Mark McCrary to the Arts Committee. Mary Rowe to the Audit and Budget Committees. Tracy Orvis and Ryan Lothar to the Design and Landmarks Committee. Cameron Ruin, Shion Gutierrez, Nikki Storm, Dennis Ward, and Elizabeth Start to the Equity Steering Committee. Deepak Kadatodad, Mary Ruth Storer, Sean Smith, and Christina Williams to the Letting Library Board. Martine Alvarez, Gary Klein, Virginia Pye, Heather Baskerville, and Ali Feuerstein to the Parks and Recreation Board. Lauren Losfelt to the Planning Commission. Ashley Ackerberg to the Public Safety Advisory Committee. John Brown and Gina Dake to the Tree Board. A resolution adopting a 2024 work plan for Elk Rock Island. A resolution amending the Letting Library Board bylaws. A resolution acting as the local contract review board, authorizing a contract with Beeman Artworks LLC for artwork creation and installation at the new City Hall. A resolution authorizing a public improvement contract with Technical Services, Inc., TSI, to provide construction services for the SCADA system upgrade. A resolution authorizing an engineering services contract with Tetra Tech, Inc. to provide professional services for the SCADA system upgrade. Does any member of council wish to remove an item from the consent agenda? And I do intend to remove the item C, a resolution adopting a 2024 work plan for Elk Rock Island from the consent agenda. Is there anything else anyone would like to remove from the consent agenda?
That was it.
Okay. Then I'll entertain a motion.
I move to approve the consent agenda as amended, removing item C.
I second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the consent agenda, removing item C. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? None heard. It passes unanimously. Okay, so item C, the staff report, the work plan for Elk Rock Island. We got a couple of people who want to testify. We got a few emails about it as well. Did the city manager or did any staff want to say anything first, or we just take the public comment? Okay. All right, then Pam Denham, please.
I'm never sure about these. Am I too loud?
No, you're good.
great.
You're good.
So my name is Pam Denham, and I'm representing the Island Station neighborhood. I'm the secretary, and we decided in our last meeting that, excuse me, that we would write a letter and send it, which you all should have gotten. And I am here to follow up on that. So I just want to say that,
Go ahead.
do I need to say what part of the work
You
plan?
wrote us a letter about the sanitation issues.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, absolutely. And so I love living here. And because I do love living here, that's why I'm here tonight. So I'm here tonight to talk about something that no one wants to talk about. Raw sewage in the parks and our waterways. The 2023-24 work plan, as in prior work plans, speaks of the stewardship of the park, its value as a natural resource, and the educational value of the site. It talks of rare plants to be preserved, invasive plant removal, insects, plant disease, as well as trash removal, protecting water quality, the impacts of off-trail use, alcohol use by visitors, and wildfire safety. And all of those are wonderful things. What is blatantly missing, however, is how to protect these natural resources from the impact of people going off the trail to pee and poop in the rare plants. Absolutely no mention of this at all. This is an immense environmental hazard. Raw sewage pollutes the land, the river, and spreads disease, hepatitis A for one. In prior years, NCPRD has placed portable toilets in Spring Park, either year-round or when the weather warms up. This year, there are none. Whatever the reason may be, care of the city parks is the responsibility of the city of Milwaukie. I'm speaking about Elk Rock Island as well as Spring Park, as you must go through our neighborhood park to get to the island. You cannot manage one without talking about the other. They go hand in hand. Unless you boat in. We see many boaters pull up to the shore, run off into the bushes to relieve themselves, and then back to their boats and they're gone. There are many signs in these parks about picking up dog waste. There are dog waste poop bags, so to facilitate that cleanliness, but nothing about human waste. Ultimately, the hundreds of people that come out to the island through Spring Park virtually every weekend have no option but to use the rare plant species as a toilet. All of this evidence shows that our city is not taking proper care of the parks that they are responsible for. We need to have 2 portable toilets in Spring Park all year long. Even when the island was an island, people and their friends and families thronged to the park. It was warm and they went to be near the water. Today, I'm only talking about toilets in Spring Park. Toilets on the island are a conversation for another day. Tonight, driving here, we saw 30 cars that are not residents of our neighborhood, of people that have gone into the park, because it's a hot night, but it's a Tuesday night. That's only, the weekends, we have hundreds of people. So we need the 2 toilets and we need them immediately. It's just horrific to take a walk through the park and see what we see, human waste and the evidence of that. We go and do cleanups with the neighborhood. Island Station had a cleanup on the day after Earth Day, and we had our grabber pickers. Oop, don't pick up that. There was a lot of that all over the place, and it's never addressed. So I figure that's my job to address that. So that's what I wanted to say. And, I'm sorry. Charles Bird wanted me to add that we need to add a dollar amount to the work plan so that staff can go beyond the basic requirements of maintenance. He wants to make sure that the trash cans are emptied because it's overflowing today when I drove by. He wants the porta potties, of course, and he wants to include trail maintenance along with the other things. So that does require a budget for that. And I think that's it.
Okay, great. Thank you, Pam.
Thank you.
And then Milo Denham? You were giving her your time. Okay. Yeah, she almost kept it 3 minutes, so excellent. All right. Anybody online seeking to comment? No. Council. We did get another letter from the North Clackamas, Watersheds Council, not critiquing the work plan, but just pointing out many opportunities afoot for Elk Rock Island and how important it is as a resting place for juvenile salmon and, for the habitat along the Willamette generally.
I can report also, Mayor Beatty, literally just before this meeting started, another letter had come in from Alexis Barton, and that was forwarded to council. But in addition to what you received before that, another one had just been received.
I don't know if we want to take a minute to read that, or we want to, if anybody, we want to have a discussion about the work plan. I guess other people are reading it. I should read it too. So Ms. Barton asked some good questions. She brings up the budget issue that was brought up by Ms. Denham and sort of talking about the management goals and the desired future conditions, whether the management plan needs a refresh, et cetera. I do think those are all questions to address. I'm sorry, yeah. Oh, she does suggest, she has some specific suggestions of language about clarifying emptying trash cans versus picking up litter. Anyway, she had a few comments there. I guess I do share, I mean, the toilet item is one issue, and that's a changed issue because NCPRD has always put in toilets at least seasonally before. And we've never gotten into June without, or we haven't in the last 6 or 7 or 8 years gotten into June without having porta potties out there. So that's the sort of pressing issue of the moment. But I guess I also feel like, we aren't entirely living up to the commitments we made to Portland when we took the island.
We are.
We
We
are.
actually we were very clear that we didn't have funding. They didn't have funding either. So we told them that this was exactly how much we could spend, and it was only for 2 years. We said we actually couldn't even make a commitment beyond staffing levels after that time. If you all want to have a discussion about whether or not we're funding parks, I would recommend we do it in the budget cycle, which is coming up in a year. So we can talk about it tonight, but my request is that we talk about it as a part of a future budget. Because we do not have any funding dedicated to doing any additional work beyond what we've already said we'll take care of, which is still more than what we originally committed to Portland. We were very clear that we did not have sufficient revenue because NCPRD was actually going to take this on originally. And they were in negotiation to take it on when Scott Archer was here.
Yeah, and they did, in fact, take it on for some period of years. I mean, at least they took on, a fair amount of it for some period of years. That changed last year or two. Anyway, any other comments? Do you have any suggestions about, do we make a request to NCPRD to place toilets?
Yeah, I've been checking in with Peter, and we can do that. We can make a request after this meeting. But again, they have the budget for it and they have the park funding. So my request would be that they actually install those for the season. I don't think they've ever done it year round. I think they would be, have they? Okay. So they might be willing to. But that's as far as we have it in our budgets.
What about the changes to the work plan? Some of the changes to the work plan, is that clarifying the verbiage around trash and
I mean, I don't feel like that's substantive enough to, can be taken into account for next year, but I don't know that that's substantive enough to hold this up. She says, clarify the verbiage around trash being emptying trash cans versus picking up litter. Suggest adding the January, February Christmas tree tie down event to the calendar. And then it asks a question about, what support NCPRD will give for efforts on the island.
Mayor, may I make a suggestion that rather than I don't know the form that we usually make requests for enhanced Parks and Recreation services, but perhaps we could formalize that a bit more and send a letter requesting it on behalf of City Council.
Absolutely.
And then attach the letter that's come from the neighborhood and the Watershed Council as well.
100%.
We'll give it maybe a bit more oomph.
Yeah, that'd be great. Do you want staff just to drop something as a cover letter for you, send it around? You'll reply directly to me if you have any edits, and if there's nothing major, we'll just send it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sure.
Thanks.
That's a good idea. And what's ironic is there has been a porta potty for people with disabilities in front of Balfour Park since last summer. And everyone disclaims, the city says it had the ones it placed there for the event at Balfour Park, the park planning event. It had them taken away, and NCPRD says they didn't put it there. So there's this porta potty that's just there. It's like, can we just, wiggle our nose and move it to Spring Park? Anyway, beyond the suggestion of a letter on the waste issue, is everybody okay with the management plan? And yeah. I mean, and it does fold into our larger discussion of parks and the park system, which I think, we will be having in the weeks to come. So, I guess I need a motion to approve the work plan since we pulled it off the consent agenda.
I move to approve the work plan for Elk Rock Island.
I'll second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the work plan for Elk Rock Island. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Yeah, I waver on that one, but I guess I voted aye. So it's passed. And there will be definitely further discussion. And we will keep you posted on what kind of response we get from NCPRD.
Thank you.
Thanks. Council will, we're moving our agenda items around a little bit. We're going to hold the 2 public hearings first. I don't know, I guess our charter stipulates the order of the agenda. It's always funny to me, but yes, we're going to have our 2 public hearings, which were later agenda items first. So the first one is supplemental budget adjustment. The public hearing on the proposed supplemental budget adjustment is called to order. The purpose of this hearing is to hear the staff report, take public comment, deliberate, and consider adopting supplemental budget adjustments. Does any member of council wish to announce actual or potential conflicts of interest? Seeing none, I'll turn it over to Finance Director Toby LaFrance.
Good evening, Mayor, Council. I'm Toby LaFrance, Finance and IT Director. And before you this evening, we have a fiscal year end supplemental budget for the middle of our biennium. And we are this evening seeking approval of the supplemental. In total, with this supplemental, appropriations will increase by $1,185,000. All of this increase is supported by revenues or offsetting reductions in other areas of the budget. In accordance with the Oregon budget law, this has been duly advertised in the Clackamas Review. And a little bit of background, on May 15th, staff did present items 1 through 4 in the staff report to the Budget Committee, where there was an opportunity to have some discussion on those items. And in the interest of time, I won't step through them again. They are contained in the staff report. We did, after meeting at the Budget Committee, become aware of one more item that we needed to take care of, and that's item number 5. I would like to spend a little bit of time there. The city has a construction excise tax, and that's applied to new commercial and residential construction. It's used primarily for affordable housing. And in our biennial budget, we have $1.1 million appropriated for affordable housing programs. We have received $2 million in eligible proposals that the city is pursuing for affordable housing. So we need to make up the difference of the $900,000. And so we've looked at, through the first 9 months of the biennium, we have received over $800,000 in CET revenue. We fully anticipate that over the next 15 months of this biennium, we should receive at least another $800,000 in construction excise tax revenue. So we will, what this proposal does is appropriate that additional revenue, because that is a revenue over and above what we had anticipated in the biennial budget. In addition, we will reduce the fund contingency by $100,000, move that up into the programs. So put those two items together, it makes up the $900,000 difference that we need to fund the $2 million of affordable housing programs. So with that is, I'll conclude the staff presentation. Staff is recommending approval of the fiscal year end biennial budget, and happy to answer any questions that you may have.
So that's still not 100% clear to me what we're doing there. Is that having to do with covering the CET grants we've already talked about, or is that dealing with past money in the CET?
So my understanding is we have $2 million of grants that the city's been discussing. And in order to be able to cut the checks related to those programs, we need the appropriations to support it. And the budget as it stands today has $1.1 million. We needed to appropriate an additional $900,000 so that we can fully fund those programs. We have the money available. It's just a matter of doing the appropriations so we can cut those checks.
Well, and the CET, some money goes into one fund and some money goes into another fund, right? There's certain pots of it that are for different purposes?
Yeah, it is all one fund. However, we do account separately. We do have within the residential and commercial different ways that those funds can be spent. The majority of it does go to affordable housing. And so we do have enough revenue in place where we can support the affordable housing programs.
Anybody have I have some other questions, but anybody, is that clear enough for everyone?
It's clear.
Yeah, okay. I had sent a email around about the C800. Can you clarify the radio overage?
Sure.
At some point, I mean, the amount you're moving is only 48,000? No. Oh, no. Okay. So yeah, so the total number when I look back at Exhibit A was, now am I gonna find it? Where is it on Exhibit A? Police, increase of 436,000? Is that how much we're paying for the radios? No,
So
okay.
happy to step through what we're doing for police. It's actually, it's three separate items.
Okay.
And let me hit the largest one first, and that's police overtime.
Yeah, okay.
And we've done an analysis of how much we've been spending on average per month in police overtime. And there's a number of factors that go into the need for that overtime. However, we are spending on average a little over $35,000 a month. If we look at our biennial budget for overtime, we are going to outpace the budget significantly. And we estimate that we need an additional $280,000 to $300,000 in the police budget to cover police overtime. Also, in community development, we have a position that we're not filling in this biennium. So there's $297,000 of savings over a 24-month period. So this is not just a one-year savings for that position. And so to pay for the overtime, what we're going to do is do a reduction in community development with an equal increase in police. So that's the first thing that we're doing in police, and that's by far the largest. In addition, for some personnel settlement and hiring that we've done, we need an additional $91,000 in personnel expenses in the police budget, and we're paying for that by an offset by a reduction in the finance budget. And so that we have some savings, personnel savings and finance budget. The position that I occupy was vacant for a while. We've had a couple of vacancies in the beginning of the biennium. And so we are reducing my budget and increasing the police budget. And lastly, we have the radios. And so that's the smallest of the changes. part of, we do have an increase in the C800 radios. It's made up of a couple of different components. Essentially, it's our share to pay for an overall 800 radio system modernization project that the county's been doing. And like so many other capital projects, it's going over its original budget amount. And so we need to contribute to that overage. And it comes in two pieces. One, we're going to have an increase in our per radio expense per year. We're going to go from about $39,000 to about $52,000. So we have roughly a $13,000 increase there. In addition, there's a one-time contribution that all the jurisdictions are making. At one point, our contribution was going to be over $140,000. Through the work of the project staff on C800, they're selling some of the old equipment. The county is also putting some ARPA funds there, and there's been some savings through Motorola. So we are now down to $59,800. And so what is in this supplemental is taking $48,000. So the police budget has enough to pay for some of that, those two items. The remaining $48,000 is coming from the information technology budget. We're going to do a reduction there. We're going to put it into the police budget. So there are three items to help the police budget. It's actually not going to cost the general fund any more money because all of them have a budgetary offset where we're reducing another department within the general fund. Does that help?
Yeah, that's a great clarification. I appreciate
Very
that.
helpful.
Yeah. The other one I want to talk about was the new city hall. So when we bought the new city hall, we figured into the financing so much, $1 million, $1.5 million or something for improvements to it. And we're needing to transfer more. So I gather that has also turned out to be more expensive than anticipated.
So what we have, and actually what I can't speak to is to whether or not the overall project in total is increasing in price. What I can say is the appropriations we need in this fiscal year, we need some additional appropriations. And so we're taking that from two pieces that are outlined in the staff report. In addition, one of the things we needed to do, and one of the things that this action does, is budgetarily, that project's going to be done at the end of the biennium. And we set up the budget so that there's going to be a zero fund balance at the end of the biennium. That was predicated on having a certain amount of beginning fund balance. And we were able to actually get some things done last biennium ahead of schedule. So the beginning fund balance in the City Hall fund was low by about $29,000. So by recognizing a portion of the revenue from the sales of our old City Hall, we're able to not only afford the cost increases that we have in our current biennium, we'll also be able to make up that difference that we didn't have enough starting cash this biennium. So any budget, you do an estimate of your beginning fund balance, and they got really close. It was just shy by about 29,000, and so this will take care of that. So actually, when you look at the total actions within this supplemental, while we're increasing appropriations by over $1 million, is actually a positive offset to the city's reserves to the tune of this $29,000.
There was also a council discussion right before Kelly Brooks left, outlining that the project was more expensive due to inflation. So this encapsulates those changes as well.
Okay. I do think when it's all done, we do need, I mean, just out of transparency, we ought to have a number that it cost us and, be fairly transparent about that. Okay. Any other questions from anyone? Okay. Have we received any additional correspondence on the topic?
No, we have not.
We have not received any correspondence at all on the topic, right?
Correct.
Okay. Does anyone wish to comment on the proposed supplemental budget adjustments? Do you have anyone online?
There are 2 people on Zoom, but neither have their hands raised, and I have no emails.
Yeah, please, yeah. If you're on Zoom, please raise your hand if you intended to testify for this. And I'm not seeing anyone waving any yellow cards here in the room, so I won't read that whole script if nobody wants to testify. Okay, and then I guess staff doesn't need to respond to the testimony since there was no testimony. Last call for questions from staff. Any questions from staff? If there are no more questions, I will entertain a motion to close the public comment part of the hearing.
I move to close the public comment part of the supplemental budget adjustment hearing.
It's been moved and seconded to close the public comment part of the supplemental budget adjustment hearing. Oh, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. Hearing no opposition, the public comment part of the supplemental adjustment hearing is closed. Is there any council discussion? Is council ready to vote? If so, I'll entertain a motion.
I move to approve the resolution authorizing a budget supplemental for the 2023-2024 biennium.
I second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the resolution authorizing a budget supplemental for the 2023-2024 biennium. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. None heard. It passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Congratulations. Thank you. All right. With that, we'll move on to our second public hearing, the housing capacity analysis and housing production strategy adoption, ordinance and resolution. While the staff is changing, I'll go ahead and read the intro. The public hearing on the proposed adoption of the housing production analysis and housing production strategy, file number CPA-2023-001 is called to order. The purpose of this hearing is to hear the staff report, take public comment, deliberate, and consider adopting the housing analysis and strategies documents. Does any member of council wish to announce actual or potential conflicts of interest? Seeing none, I will turn it over. Oh, first.
Great. Hi, Mayor.
Turn it over to Community Development Director Joseph Briglio
Excellent.
and any manager.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor and councilors. Joseph Briglio, Community Development Director, and I'm here with my esteemed colleague, Laura Weigel, Planning Manager. We are here to hopefully get close to, to close out this project, essentially, and improve our housing capacity analysis as well as our housing production strategy. As you know, we've had a couple meetings with you all preceding this meeting, and we've also just recently were at the Planning Commission. So there's a little bit of some nuance here tonight because there's 2 different kind of paths and actions that we need to get to, but I'm going to hand it off to Laura to kind of walk through what's recently happened and then also provide the overview again, even though I'm sure you've heard it many times of what these 2 documents are. So with that, I'll let you.
All right, Joseph. I can't really read that, so we'll see what it says. Like I could get myself in trouble. All right, great. And just to let you all know, thanks for having us. Caitlin Levante is Beth Goodman's counterpart at Eco Northwest, our consultant, and she is here online in case there's any questions that Joseph and I can't answer. So thanks so much, Caitlin, for being here tonight. And so I'm going to keep it short and sweet because we've had a couple of conversations about this. So I'll just give you the highlights and then just kind of have an opportunity for you all to ask any burning questions here as we're getting to the finish line. All right, so we've got the housing capacity analysis. It provides the technical background to support future planning efforts related to housing production and options for addressing a need met and housing needs in Milwaukie. The background is that it's adopted as an ancillary document to the comprehensive plan. It's required by DLCD every 6 years. The components of the document are outlined by state statute. It identifies housing needs now and in the future, and it analyzes the land availability within the city of Milwaukie to meet our future needs. Then we have our housing production strategy. It includes the strategies to achieve equitable housing opportunities for all of Milwaukee, with an emphasis on improving outcomes for underserved communities, low-income households, and people in state and federal protected classes. And then the background, obviously housing affordability has been a key issue here in Milwaukee for several years. The City Council adopted the Milwaukee Housing Affordability Strategy in 2018. This document builds upon that. This is a new requirement of the state. We've never made this document before, so this is our first time out of the gate. We're us and a lot of other folks across the state. And then we're required to report back to the state every 3 to 6 years on our progress in implementing the plan. So we've done some good engagement. We had a housing capacity technical committee, a really great group of people. We met with them 6 times, and they worked with us on all the details of the document and went through all of the strategies with a fine-tooth comb. Councilor Calzarabate represented the council on that, spent a lot of time with us, and the technical committee recommends approval of the documents. We met with the equity steering committee at the beginning of the process to talk a little bit about community engagement. We had stakeholder interviews with developers and service providers to kind of understand what folks were looking for in the housing production strategy, so that we were sure that our strategies were in alignment with what they think they need. We did a housing survey on Engage Milwaukee. We had several hundred responses, and we promoted the whole project throughout the pilot and the NDA Friday updates, and also provided outreach to the NDAs and talked to them. And so regulatory process, you all have seen it in January and then last month in May, and the Planning Commission reviewed the housing capacity analysis as well as the housing production strategy and recommend approval of both of the documents. And so we've got 2 different documents, 2 different ways to approach 2 different processes that are needed to approach it. So one, we need to adopt it by an ordinance, because it is an ancillary document to the comprehensive plan. So obviously the staff recommendation is to approve the ordinance with the recommended findings. Alternatively, you could approve the ordinance with additional modifications to the findings, and those modifications would need to be read into the record. You can continue the hearing, or you could deny the ordinance. And then with the HPS, we really are just looking to adopt it through a resolution. It's not an official adopted document as part of the comprehensive plan, and that's what the state requires, is adoption through a resolution. So we're recommending that you do that, and if you don't, then we would ask that you adopt the resolution with any modifications to the document, request revisions to the document, and bring it back to council for discussion. And that is my short and sweet presentation for the evening. I am happy, and Joseph and Caitlin are here to answer any questions that you all might have outstanding.
So were there no changes from Planning Commission review from what we saw before?
No, they caught a couple of the little typos that you did, and so we fixed those. Yep.
That's it. Okay. Questions, anyone?
It's amazing amount of work, and thank you. And thank you for coming back so many times.
That's what we're here for.
I didn't feel like it was so many times, but I do appreciate the work. Yeah, I would like to have seen it earlier, actually, but I do appreciate all the work. Wait. I'm getting ahead of myself on the script. Any other questions? Okay. Have we received any correspondence on this topic?
We have not.
Scott, we haven't. Okay. And does anyone wish to comment on the proposed housing analysis and production strategy? We don't have anyone in the room wishing to comment. Is there anyone online?
No email and no hands.
Raising their hands? Okay. Then I will forego reading the rest of that script. And staff doesn't need to respond to testimony because there was no testimony, and council had no questions. If there are no more questions, I will entertain a motion to close the public comment part of the hearing.
I move to close the public comment part of the housing analysis and production strategy adoption hearing.
I second.
It's been moved and seconded to close the public comment part of the housing analysis and production strategy adoption hearing. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. It passes unanimously. The public comment part of the Housing Analysis and Production Strategy Adoption hearing is closed. Is there any council discussion? Okay, is council ready to vote? I'll entertain a motion.
I move for the first and second readings by title only and adoption of the ordinance amending the comprehensive plan by adding the housing capacity analysis and ancillary document to maintain compliance with state requirements. File number CPA-2023-001.
I second.
It's been moved and seconded for the first and second readings by title only and adoption of the ordinance amending the comprehensive plan by adding the housing capacity analysis and ancillary document to maintain compliance with state requirements, file number CPA-2023-001. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. None here heard. It passes unanimously. Ms. Ober, would you please read the ordinance 2 times by title only?
An ordinance of the City of Milwaukie, Oregon, amending the comprehensive plan by adding the housing capacity analysis and ancillary document to maintain compliance with state requirements, file number CPA 2023-001. And again, an ordinance of the City of Milwaukie, Oregon, amending the comprehensive plan by adding the housing capacity analysis and ancillary document to maintain compliance with state requirements. File number CPA 2023-001.
Mr. Stoffer, would you please poll the council?
Council President Nicodemus.
Aye.
Counselor Stavengerd. Counselor Cosrabati.
Aye.
Counselor Massey.
Aye.
Mayor Beatty.
Aye.
Motion carried 5-0. Ordinance 2230.
Okay. And now we turn to the HCA, the HPS adoption. So I will entertain a separate motion.
I move to approve the resolution adopting a housing production strategy.
I second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the resolution adopting a housing production strategy. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. Passes unanimously. That was super quick.
That was amazing. That was truly amazing. Thank you all.
Thank you so much.
There was a lot of prep. A lot of prep.
Council will now turn back to the business item, which is the Design and Landmarks Committee. Oh, is Brett online or are you just handling? Oh, Brett's here.
It's right here.
Did you sneak in?
He just snuck in.
Jazz hands and all.
That's on-time shipping right there. Right.
Well done. Very well done. I don't know how to see that here, so I can make it a slideshow instead of, I can just do it up there.
Oh, no, shrink it. And there we go. Is this Brett? Yeah, you'll see it. Share.
I have to share.
And then so the Zoom people can see it. And then you like. There you
Very great, thanks.
go. You're still sitting.
Yeah. All right, well, thanks so much for having us here tonight. We really appreciate it. Laura Weigel, Planning Manager, obviously. And then Brett Kelver, he's been leading the DLC for many years, and so we're going to kind of tag team this conversation. So we're here tonight to talk about the Design and Landmarks Committee. It was established in 1990 as the Historic Review Committee. It's morphed over time. It's changed a lot over time, as you all can see from the staff report. It provides recommendations to the Planning Commission on downtown design review and historic resources. And we've kind of been on hiatus since 2022, post the downtown design review update. And prior to that, we were really, during COVID, we were also meeting with them sporadically based on what we needed to do for working through the downtown design review code, as well as reviewing any downtown design review applications or historic resources applications. So really, since the beginning of 2022, it's been kind of a sporadic meeting schedule with the DLC. So
They met last night.
Sorry, they did meet last night. Yes, they did. They hadn't met in a little while, so they met last night. I forgot about that. Thank you for clarifying that. They did have a good recommendation, so that's good. So tonight we're here to talk about the possibility of retiring the DLC. We're talking about this not because we don't admire all the work that DLC has done over the years. There's been a lot of work that's gone into developing the downtown design review code, and that work is now done. It took a heavy lift and many years to get finished, and so we think that our code is in really good shape to continue to have the code that we need to get the projects that we want here in downtown. And then the historic review part, that part still applies. We still have code that we use to look at historic resource applications, right? So the historic resources review part doesn't go away if DLC goes away. It just takes out the step of having the DLC look at it and then make a recommendation to Planning Commission, and then Planning Commission is actually the review body that looks at it. So it kind of takes out an extra step. And with the historic review, we kind of were trying to understand, over the course of time, how much review have we done? What has been done in that regard? And so we went back and we looked at all of the historic review since 1990, when the original inventory was updated. And we've had 30 applications since 1990 for historic review. And not even a dozen of those have probably been reviewed by the DLC, because some of those are administrative reviews, so we can do those internally. So very few of those actually go to the DLC for review. So it's been infrequent with the downtown design review and the historic resource review for the DLC. I think since with the design review, since 2004, we've had 60 design review applications. We've only had 13 of those reviewed by the DLC, because the rest of those can be looked at and approved from an administrative perspective. So that's really less than one downtown design review. It's not even a quarter of an application per year. So as you can see, we don't have a lot of these applications coming in. We also, regarding the historic resources inventory, so that was done back in 1989, right? And we do have it on our work plan to go in and update that as part of the comp plan implementation. But we have a bunch of other stuff on the work plan before we get to that. And so, oh, sorry. I lost my train of thought there for a second. Sorry about that. So what we need to do now is kind of take our focus and work on the other things that we have going, and kind of move away from the focus of running the Design and Landmarks Commission, and also kind of just acknowledging that it's not taking up a lot of our time now. So we do have the alternative to kind of keep it going as an ad hoc committee, but we're really not going to need the Design and Landmark Commission and the historic review part until several years from now, when we update the historic resources. And there are only 16 significant resources in the city of Milwaukie, and those are protected by our code. When we did the inventory in 1989, there were 130 on there. Most of those came off because property owners did not want to be on that list, because what comes with that list and what comes with the designation as significant requires a lot of review and some rules and regulations and what can and cannot be done. So right now we have 16 properties on the list that are protected here in the city and do have code that applies to those and would still go through the Planning Commission if it were a type 3 or a type 5 review. So the combination of not having a lot of design review and historic resource review and not having a lot of resources on the list right now kind of has led us, and the amount of time that it's required that takes for staff to manage that as an ongoing committee is significant. It's not insignificant. And so because we don't have any real projects for that group to dig into at this moment, that's why we are kind of talking to you about the possibility of retiring the group. And so the next steps is if we were to retire it, what we would do is when we get to the historic resources update, instead of using the DLC, we would find folks in the community that are interested in historic resources and want to serve on kind of an ad hoc committee, just like we had for the housing capacity analysis, just like we do for the TSP. We find a group of people that are like-minded and want to work on a particular subject and dive into it. So that would be something that we would talk about doing as part of that process. And then what we would do, we would need to look at the code and make some changes in the code because now things have to go to the DLC before they come to the Planning Commission. But the planning, and also the other thing is that the Planning Commission actually has the capacity to review the very infrequent applications that come in for downtown design review and historic resources. And they also are capable. We don't have a historic resources person except for Commissioner Hemer, who's actually on there right now, is on the commission now, but won't be on the commission in the future. He doesn't have that background, but he has a passion for it. And so we don't have anybody on the Planning Commission at the moment, but what we would do in the future, if we did retire the DLC, is to try to make an effort to recruit somebody who is interested in her historic resources, as well as recruiting somebody that has that architectural background that can bring that element to the Planning Commission. Right now, she used to be chair, Lauren Loisfeld, Commissioner Loisfeld. She does have that architectural background, and so she's been super useful for the Planning Commission. And so that is what we are bringing to you tonight. We're open. We want to have a conversation with you all to get any feedback that you might have, answer any questions that you might have. I know that Mayor Beatty had some questions that I want to talk about. I'm happy to, and Brett we're both happy to answer any questions that you might have about what we're suggesting.
Just to clarify something you just said, you said, we could appoint a, ad hoc or limited time committee at the point we're working on that inventory. But isn't the whole thing of being recognized by the state as a, whatever they call it, CLG? That's a permanent committee, right?
Yeah, but we're not recognized as a CLG now. So yeah, we wouldn't be doing that at this point in time.
But I mean, at the time we turn to our code and I realize that's not your priority, that you're kicking off the TSP, et cetera. But at the time we turn to the code and the inventory, we might want to be a CLG. And that's a conversation we should have.
Yeah, and we can have that conversation. We can talk about some of the requirements that are a part of that being a CLG.
I mean, I looked at it, what it says on the state website, and it looks pretty simple to me.
It's simple, not simple, I think, is the answer. At least when I look at it, I haven't dug all the way into it, but I think I've kind of got enough of an understanding. I think one of the main things is that if we did go after CLG status, is the big difference right now is the DLC is a committee, and they require a commission with review authority. So we would actually have to change it from a committee to a commission with review authority. So we would need to go in, update bylaws and update code and all of those things just based on that alone. So that would be kind of a big lift for us to do. And then we would also have to find folks that are historic preservation specialists and have backgrounds in that. That's one of the requirements. So we would just be kind of hoping that we would be able to find that many people in the city of Milwaukie. One thing that was unclear to me is I couldn't find how many people that needed to be, but my guess is going to be at least 5. So there are a couple of things that we would need to do. And then the other thing is that we do have a preservation ordinance that was adopted in 1989. I looked at the model code ordinance and that's required by the state, and obviously we don't need to do the model code, but the model code ordinance was 24 pages. So it was very, very, very detailed. So I think that one of the exercises that we would also need to go through would be to go in and look at our ordinance and make sure that that would be okay with the state. And if it wasn't, what kind of, and it's really antiquated too. So we probably would want to revisit that if we were going to look into being a CLG. So that's kind of just the things that I see that would take an actual, a lift of staff in the, it's not as kind of as simple as converting it from a committee. We'd have to make it a commission, look at the ordinance, update bylaws, that kind of thing.
Well, but we're going to have to do that here too. If we disband it, we're going to have to do that.
Yes. That's a matter of striking things out as opposed to having a dialogue about what we should actually add back in, right? So it's just a little bit different. It's a little bit more of a heavy lift. So that's what I know about becoming a CLG at this time.
I mean, a couple people wrote us and indicated that that opens up doors to money, to grant opportunities to fund some of this stuff.
It does. I think that what I read is that they have like $5,000 to $20,000 in grant funds. They also require a match. So we would have to match whatever funds that we got. So we'd have to create the committee or the commission. Then we'd have to redo bylaws and redo the municipal code. Then we would have to get grant money, and then we would need to find matching money. And then we'd also have to figure out what programs we were going to do. We know the one thing that we want to do, right, is update the historic resources inventory. And from what I understand, Commissioner Hemer, along with some other folks in the city, are actually working on developing that inventory now, which is great because that takes some burden and some cost off of the city to do, which is wonderful. So there's a lot of steps that would get us before we would be getting money, and then we'd have to decide what it was. So basically what I'm saying is it's a taking resources away from what we would be doing in the next couple of years and pivoting them and putting them into historic resources prior to the kickoff of when we want to update the historic resources inventory several years from now.
Now, your staff report says 2025, 2 years.
I say hopefully in 2025. Everything takes longer than you think, because what we're working on right now is we have the natural resources as our first next out of the gate, and we're going to be coming to you all in September. We've been working on a work plan for that. We also have flood management. We also have Willamette Greenway, and we have parks. So we have kind of 4 big projects ahead of historic resources.
Maybe we need to look at that prioritization again.
And that is up to this council to decide.
Yeah, it would be maybe good to have that conversation at some point too.
I have a question going back to the CLG. Oh, sorry.
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
Because you were saying those are the things that would have to be put into process in order to be considered a CLG city or qualify, right? But just from some of the comments that we got, it looks like that there's been businesses that have already received those funds.
In the past.
Right, and so it looks like we haven't been involved since 2019. Is that accurate?
I don't think we've been, it's further back than 2019. I am not sure of the date, but it's definitely not 2019. It's been further back.
Yeah, those things he was talking about, the storefront improvements at Cha-Cha-Cha and stuff, I think that was the mid-2000s, I would say, mid to late 2000s.
I mean, he mentions that he spoke with Jason Allen, the state SHPO representative, and that Milwaukie still qualifies as a CLG city, but have not been involved since 2019.
We could qualify as a CLG city, but we would still have to go through the process, and we'd still have to make some changes to the DLC and turn it into a commission. That's my understanding. I'd have to dig into it for sure, but that's my cursory understanding of the situation, yeah. That we are not currently a CLG, and we would have to go through a process to become a CLG. We have been in the past, but we haven't been in quite some time.
So, and did I hear you correctly that the ceiling for the possible grants is $20,000?
Yes, it says 5 to 20,000 range in recent years.
Does that seem like a lot to go through for a very small amount of money?
It does.
Okay. Just wanted to make sure I wasn't alone.
Yeah.
I did just want to make people aware that Lauren Loosfeld has her hand raised. If you wanted to take a comment.
All right.
Do you want to take that right now?
Yeah.
It's a Lauren. I'm speculating it's Loosfeld. So, Lauren, can you hear us?
Good evening. Thanks for joining us.
If you could confirm your identity and city of record real quick for the record.
Hey, thanks for giving me the opportunity to speak. Of course, current commissioner and previous DLC chair and member of DLC. Just wanted to share a couple of thoughts and know that this has been a conversation that has a lot of history and has been ongoing. And I recognize the challenges that the city has in properly staffing and keeping up with. And I just recognize that Brett has done an excellent job, particularly those years where I was able to kind of witness his work on the DLC. So thank you, Brett. I think I just want to share that while member of the DLC and reporting to the Planning Commission on the particular projects that were in front of us during my maybe 3.5 years on the DLC. It was a challenge to be clear and to understand how and where our recommendations to the Planning Commission were being, really instructive to the process of the Planning Commission. And we did often talk about our authority as a committee versus the opportunity to be a commission, to have a little bit more autonomy in providing more clear kind of judgment about a particular project. And I just want to say that's been one of the challenges for the group. And it feels to me like creating a commission, while I understand the staff burden, would create that clarity both for the DLC itself, but also for the public, and just understanding when a project presents itself in front of the DLC and otherwise they're hearing a series of recommendations, how seriously are they to take those recommendations? What are they required to do? And it feels a little bit like kind of a yet one more additional hurdle in front of an applicant, whereas providing that authority to a committee might be a more sure way to provide clarity of a particular ruling. I do want to also point out that members of the DLC, at least during my time, were selected for their their experience and their knowledge, the capacity of which they understood kind of architectural design aspects. Yes, a number of those kind of those skills and talents are recognized within the Planning Commission itself, but it certainly was a group of people that catered itself more to understanding those values a little bit more clearly through the DLC. And I think that the Planning Commission might have bandwidth, as Laura pointed out, it's not a group that has that expertise where you could really create kind of a dialogue back and forth about architecture and design related elements. And so that would definitely be something that I would be concerned about if it were to shift to the DLC. And then the final point I'll make is just relative to the kind of historic inventory within the downtown area. I know most of the applications that we were seeing at the time were not related to historic elements or projects within the downtown area, and they were more so new construction. And so while there's an opportunity here for a focus on historic, I think it doesn't quite capture the potential and the future of downtown Milwaukie, which is, I think, more likely to be about new construction and infill rather than preservation of historic elements. So just wanted to offer that up and appreciate the opportunity.
Thank you. Thank you for joining us.
Yeah.
Do you have any questions to ask of?
I have a comment. So thank you for that. I really struggle when we talk about historic preservation because I think we're leaving out a big part of what are we really honoring with this? Because if we look at it, Black and Indigenous people have been historically been denied homeownership. Indigenous people have had their land taken from them. So what are we really honoring here? What history are we talking about? What history are we trying to preserve? Because Black folks and Indigenous folks haven't been able to build generational wealth through home ownership. So now we're gonna say these houses that, we put on stolen land are now historic. I mean, that to me, that screams of privilege, and it doesn't sit right with me. I don't, whether or not I can just say I don't mind if the DLC and all this goes away, because there's a deeper issue here, right? It meant Black folks, Indigenous folks get redlined. They don't get to live in the good neighborhoods. They don't get the amenities that you get when you live in a historic neighborhood, right? So once again, what are we really honoring? What history are we honoring? And not to mention, I've been doing some research. In Seattle, in Seattle, they rejected a 200-unit apartment because it was taller than what the historic buildings were going to be. So as we think about all this, doing this, is this going to lead to more housing, right? I mean, these are just things to think about, right? I don't know and I know I'm sounding like a broken record. When we talk about historic preservation, what are we preserving? What is it? Because we live in Oregon, and Oregon did not allow, they had sundown laws for Black folks. Do I really want to honor something it's Oregon, right? Folks had their land taken away. So what are we honoring? What history are we honoring here?
Well, the building didn't do that.
The people who built the building did.
Yes.
And so in honoring the architecture, we're honoring those people who did what they did. I just don't, that's my struggle with this, with historic preservation. And, it's a building, the building didn't do it, but the people who built the building probably didn't allow Black people in or Indigenous folks in. I mean, these are things we have to think about, right? We have a history in this country, and we have to be able to say, yep, we did this. Do we honor these folks who perpetuated the systemic racism by, keeping homes and buildings up?
Well, to me, there are two different issues, but I would encourage you to talk with Denise McGriff, the mayor of Oregon City, a Black woman, and also a big advocate for historic preservation.
May I add a thought?
Yeah.
I want to thank you, because all too many times we have the codification of policies like this in local government, and it's not challenged. And when I think of the preservation of homes, one of the first things that comes to mind for me is all of the families in Northeast Portland who didn't have an opportunity to preserve and improve and stay in their homes, because that's the systemic oppression that is the heritage of mainstream Oregon. And I don't want to be a part of perpetuating that pain to Milwaukie residents. So at the very least, this warrants a larger, not this decision, but this topic warrants a larger conversation. When I think of cultural heritage or preservation of heritage, I think of something like Elk Rock Island, because that's true heritage for this area. I think about some of the families that that we're losing oral traditions of tribes and peoples who lived in this area. I think about when we're growing a garden in our front yard, how are we actually paying respect to the land that we're building on? And I know that goes a little bit deeper into a rabbit hole, but I think that these things are linked, and I want to say thank you for bringing it up. And I can tell it's not easy, and I hate that it's you every time that has to bring it up.
Thank you.
Yeah, I appreciate Council President Nicodemus's comments. And Councilor Davenport is right. It's unfortunate that he's the one that brings it up every time, but it may not have been the building that did anything, but it's what the building represents to some people. There's some people that may walk by a historical building and think that's where atrocities have happened to my people. So I can see how what the building represents, it's not about what the building did, but what business was conducted in that building and what business in that building led to certain atrocities for people. Where I was looking more towards was, since the CLG had come up, I was looking at it, even though the 5,000 to 20,000 may seem like, it's a lot of staff work to do for such a small amount. Those are significant amounts for these small business owners. And for a business like Cha Cha Cha, who is a BIPOC business, to be able to get a grant for $2,500 and improve their storefront, I think there's a benefit to that. And that could actually go a long way in hopefully mending some of the historic issues, right? And promoting more of that for our BIPOC business owners and getting more of that into that economic development for them. So that's really where I was kind of looking at the DLC's benefit at this stage. It may not have what it used to be able to conduct, but at this stage, since we don't have economic development as a goal, there's not a lot there is money going towards that, but not in the sense where it's directly impacting businesses like storefronts. There's the benefit to that right now. I mean, there's not much else those business owners have. And if this is something we might have to do a little bit of heavy lifting in order to help them maintain that, I think it's worth it.
Can I ask, one of the suggestions in some of the email or some of the letters we got was, keep the DLC on as a intermittent group and let them work with the folks from the Milwaukie Museum who are working on trying to start a, inventory. What do you think about that idea?
I mean, I think it is possible. I also think that it's just going to take we will still need to manage that group, and we will still need to convene meetings, and we will still need to have agendas, and we will still need to take minutes and report back, and we'll have to make sure that work is getting done. And ultimately, if we're responsible for a group, then we're responsible for the work that they're doing.
Well, I mean, if they're, okay.
So we would just have an obligation to follow that and be managing that to a certain extent, because that's what we would do, because it is a city committee.
Well, I mean, if they did it individually on their time and we're only meeting as the city committee, twice a year or something, but we're working with them as volunteers on their time, it could be done without the city giving the print of, the imprimatur on it.
But I don't know if we have any other models of committees like that.
We don't. You also have the ability for those same individuals to work with the Historic Museum. There's nothing that changes that project. And I think Laura's talked about the desire actually and the appreciation that the museum is working on this at this time. We had talked about, so one of the discussions that I've had with Laura is Laura's actually the best person, in the city to create task forces as needed to deal with changes. So we do it over and over again. We're doing it with the TSP. We just did it with the HPS. We do it all the time. So she is constantly bringing in new community members through you all in order to have these discussions. What we've run into with having this group without a vision or time is that we can't keep them. So we lose people because there's not enough regular meetings. Then we have to reappoint, then we don't have enough members, then we do this process again and again. And so my concern is all of those, I like making sure our volunteers have work to do. And we're going to ask them to serve. You all can do whatever you want. This is not me telling you, you can't move this to an ad hoc. My direction based on what I just heard from you would be then we don't staff it. And we're not doing minutes and we're not doing these other things. That means you can't have a majority of a city committee meeting. Because then we would need minutes and we would need to document it and there would need to be invitations. There would need to be a public noticing requirement. Like all those things would have to happen. So you would have to drop below the quorum in order to do that work. If we're really trying to separate the staff side of this from a committee functioning.
And the one caveat to that I would add is that if they're going to continue to be an ad hoc committee, then the question is whether or not, I would assume that we would still have them be reviewing the downtown design review applications as well as the historic review applications. And those don't happen on a schedule. Those just happen when they come in and then we need somebody. And that's how it's been working for the last several years, is that if an application comes in, we call them up and we say, hey, are you all available? Can you come in and look at this? So there would be still, if it stays an ad hoc committee, that would be something that we would be continuing to use them for.
And we just tonight reappointed 2. So I assume they knew this conversation was going on, but they were interested in being reappointed, even though this conversation was.
Well, yeah, I think, and in part because this conversation is happening and was happening after the meeting that we had last night, I think not knowing which direction things would go, it seemed prudent to reappoint them so that we wouldn't have to come back to you on a special basis if the decision was to continue to keep the committee going. So yeah, we did discuss this at the DLC meeting last night, and I think folks understood they understood staff's recommendation and preference and some of the options and that you all would be talking about it tonight.
But the 2 specifically who re-upped chose to they chose to re-up. They like being on it.
Yes.
Yes, okay.
Sorry to interrupt you. I just wanted to point to order. I think that the report is thorough your report to us is thorough. The recommendation is clear. And I'm wondering if we can do a call, can we call a question?
Straw poll?
Or just call the question?
Well, we haven't heard from Commissioner Massey, so I think
Yeah,
we
well,
should-
I heard a lot tonight. I wasn't expecting everything I heard, but it was enlightening. I certainly value Commissioner Nicodemus's input as well as the written input of Commissioner Hemer and Commissioner Losevelt, who I worked with for a long time. But I just kind of get back to, I think what I heard is that I just think that the return on investment is not there for the DLC. And I don't think that the return on investment would be there even if we went for the higher category and that kind of thing. And so I just think it's when you look at the amount of applications that come in and that kind of thing, yeah, the Planning Commission can do it. I guess that's my point. Yeah, I'd love to have a jury of preservationists and architects and that kind of thing, but you're probably not going to always have that. It's difficult to maintain people. So I just don't see the return on the investment of this operation. And so I'm inclined to side with the staff and say, let's move on. And when something comes up, we can establish a temporary organization to deal with a bigger project like the historic inventory. And I got to tell you, I've been listening to the museum staff for years saying, put me in, coach, we want to do it. And so it's not going to take a lot to form that temporary committee.
You mean when the city comes back to forming, or you mean what the museum is doing in terms of?
When they come to the historic inventory that they have to do in a few years out, the museum staff is, I've been hearing it for years that they want to take that on. And so I'm just saying,
they're already
you have a
taking it.
core of people who can, take on that team that we've been talking about.
Okay, we wanted a straw poll. I hear a lot of votes for disbanding the DLC. I think you and I are the two who aren't so sure. Yeah, I wouldn't disband the DLC. I think we need to start this in 2025, and so I wouldn't disband something that we're gonna need to create in 2 years again. And I think Councilor Kosherbati made some good points about, I just don't think there's so much we don't know about what what the incentives and potentials are through the state designation process. So is that where we are? I guess let's go around. Disband or not disband? You said disband.
I hate the word disband, but yeah. We need to move on from the DLC. Yeah.
We need to move on from the DLC.
Yeah.
I'm in favor of dissolving it.
I'm not. This is new information for me that Commissioner Hemer sent out. I didn't know that DLC had acted like that before and provided that. That's why, because before I was more leaning towards dissolution as an opportunity to do it ad hoc. But with that, again, I know it's been repeated, the return on investment, but the return on investment isn't for us, it's for the businesses.
Well, and I think I'd like to just say, I think that when we do come back to historic resources in a couple of years and we get there on the work plan, it sounds like there's a much larger conversation to be had around historic resources that we're not going to have tonight. And part of that conversation might be, what does that look like in the future? How do we redefine historic resources? How do we find funding for that redefinition of historic resources? So that opportunity isn't going to go away. It's going to go away temporarily in the context it's in, but there's an opportunity to explore what that might look like when we come back to the historic resources conversation that we're slated to have in a couple of years.
Yeah, I still think it's a lot to miss out on for those businesses in a couple of years, potentially.
And I will just note, I guess this is a question for Brett. I know Mary Neustatter is someone with some historic preservation background. Is there anyone else on the current DLC who brings that?
None of the other 4 members of the 5 have the degree of expertise and background that Mary has, as I understand it. I think we have several who have a lot of design expertise and experience.
Architecture.
Right, architecture and design.
Yeah.
So we'd probably have to, if we did maintain it, we'd have to turn it into a CLG and then turn it into a committee. We'd still have to recruit a whole different group of people.
Right. So the planning commissioner noted that she felt like the conversations were better. She was pretty clear about that. She thought the quality of the conversations in the process of the review was better.
I'm glad she's still on the planning commission, because then she can have those conversations.
I was always impressed that we had so many architects who wanted to serve on that board. I've done the interviews for that board a few times, and it was always very impressive.
They've been great, and I will add that they have recommended to approve all of the applications to planning commission. They haven't not recommended approval. Mm-hmm. They have given some comments, but it's been an approval on all of the applications.
Yeah, they made some changes to Axle Tree. I remember that.
We don't need one? No?
It's set up as a discussion. I'm just providing feedback to staff. Any decision points will have to come forward in the future.
So we will bring them in August. For the code change, or when do you want to be forward?
Well, we'll have to look at the forecaster because that's pretty packed. So why don't we look at it and then see when we can do it?
Sounds great.
Okay, thank you. All right, thank you so much, you all. Appreciate your time.
All right. We still have council reports, and we definitely have some things to report on, like the recent C4, and we have more executive sessions. So, yeah. So let's take a short break and come back at 8 o'clock.
Great night.
Okay, we are back on the record, and we have left legislative and regional issues. So we'll start out by talking about getting a brief update on the legislative session, which is kind of derailed.
Yep, I don't have a whole lot to report, but I'm keeping in track with Kelly Brooks, who started this session off with us. Here's where we are. All the big dates are past us, and we're down to waiting for constitutional sine die or whatever else N in Salem might bring to us, or a special session later.
Yeah, that seems pretty
likely.
likely.
But there, of the bills that the city staff council have been tracking, there was a little uptick in at least things in OLIS being reported. A number of readings, which I think we're seeing a number of these being just rescheduled, as the certain Senate chamber is unable to do business, they continue to reschedule it. So a number of things that we've been watching are still in reading. There were a couple items that got work sessions lately. SB 5511, which I think, Mayor, is the mayor's request for, it had a work session scheduled for today. And then the business of the day, I haven't had a chance to circle back, but that one I think is the one where the mayor's asked for allocations to cities, got a work session today. And then a bunch of just all those top ones are third readings. I think we're seeing that hold up there. And then Council President Nicodemus, SB 283, the education. That was my shorthand. I can't remember off the top of my head what that meant, but that bill got a work session, or is getting a work session tomorrow. So I think that's the legislation activity. And I was not aware of any council letters being drafted or proposed at this time. So that is what I have.
Well, technically, there's a letter that you all started the evening off requesting, and it has already been sent to you. So for Elk Rock Island tonight, just so you know, I have sent it. If you want to look at it before we close out, you can give me edits tonight.
I mean, I'll look at it when I get home.
Okay,
I'll
sounds great.
comments if I have any. I don't want to read it on the fly. But in terms of legislative letters, yeah, I'm not aware of any. The HB 3414 continues to be contentious. I guess the latest set of amendments is a little better, but there's still a lot of concerns about it.
When I checked this morning in OLIS, that didn't have anything scheduled on it. That was on my list to check.
Well, when they had a hearing last Thursday, I think it got like less than 24 hours notice of the hearing. I mean, there's a little bit of dubious activity going on there, the way they're scheduling their hearings, to not get any participation. Yeah, I don't really know. I mean, yeah, it sounds like, I wish I had a crystal ball. It sounds like probably they'll, close out and they'll come back for a special session, which is supposed to be limited to budgetary items, and it's unclear how much they can, sort of package budget and substantive policy and get through that. But I guess, yeah, it's, who knows what we're gonna see. Anyway, okay, anybody else have anything on legislation? Nope, all right. Then meeting reports. I know there was the C4 retreat.
I'll go first.
Oh, you'll go first, okay.
I got PARB.
Okay.
Nothing to report. Except we talked about since Ben is no longer on PARB, then we need somebody to replace him. And so there was talk about one PARB member attended a meeting and was like, it was very disrespectful, the way the meeting was conducted.
Are you talking about the DAC?
Yeah,
Oh, okay.
yeah. And this person was like, there's no way I'm gonna join that committee just because of the way the meetings were.
That was a recent meeting?
Yeah. And so I asked Gary if he would, Gary Klein, I thought he'd be great, but he was like, no. So That's what we talked about. And the current chair would be terms out. So I think that was like a breath of fresh air for some folks who were like, oh, that person isn't going to be the chair anymore.
Yes, that's true.
Yeah.
He's not going to be the chair anymore. Ryan's going to be the chair.
Yeah.
Ryan's going to be the next chair.
So
So that, yes.
that changes the whole,
Will change the tenor,
Yeah.
absolutely. But I've been going for whatever, 4 months now, and I haven't found any of the meetings particularly disrespectful. I think people have been, some people maybe talk too long, but I haven't
I
found
may be
any.
misquoting,
Yeah.
but I mean, that word
Yeah.
sticks out in my head.
Well, we definitely need somebody from PARB, so I hope somebody, I did make that point to Ally when we were doing we did some interviews for PARB, for the boards and commissions. And so on the sidelines of that, I did say, hey, are you going to be our new rep to the DAC? And she did not chomp at that bit, I will say. Okay. And I understand PARB's going to have a special meeting on parks. What's going on with this? There's some special meetings coming up on playgrounds and stuff.
We've already been doing some of them.
Yeah.
Do you want to talk about it?
Yeah, well, at Juneteenth, they're gonna have a couple tables, and they're looking for parks experts, mainly kids, to give more input on what kind of equipment they want. So it's a lot of engagement to get input on what.
Adam's been phenomenal.
Yes,
He really is.
he's been really good.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I can add. So, one of the things that we're in the process of, hopefully we're going to get, we submitted an application to the state for their state local government grant program, as well as the Nature and Neighborhoods program with Metro. And, one of the things that they've asked us to do is do engagement with the community and children. And what Adam's been doing these last 2 months has been talking to kids and the community about the playgrounds and what sort of features, those actual specific playground features that the kids would be interested in. So about 2 weeks ago, maybe 2.5 weeks ago, we had a meeting, met with the Oak Lodge Boys and Girls Club. Adam met with them. Oak Grove.
Oak Grove Boys and Girls Club.
Oak Grove Boys and Girls Club. On a Monday or Tuesday afternoon, and had a little mini design charrette for the playground features. I think there were 33 kids there. Kids had a great time, got some good feedback from them. On the 12th, Monday the 12th, Adam's got a meeting with PARBs and the friends of, one of the friends groups, I can't remember which one off the top of my head, but to talk about some of the specific playground designs and get some technical feedback or some feedback from the adults on playground designs.
That's not on our calendar, by the way. I don't know if it should be, but I'm just looking at
The parks design process. So we've had a conversation with Adam. He's been pretty concerned about making sure that the parks playground discussions happen with very set kids who have a structured environment to make sure that it remains focused on kids and safe for them. So we've been going into facilities. So we're not talking about it much out in public.
Well, this one, he said, is an adults meeting on Monday.
It's
the PARB.
It's with PARB. It's at the Letting Library at 5:30 to 7 o'clock on the 12th.
So the special meeting's not on there?
And then, as Councilor Nicodemus mentioned, there's an event. He's going to be hosting a 10 at the Juneteenth event, and also I think the following weekend at the Pride event. So just trying to get additional feedback on those like playground amenities, swing set or towers and all those sorts of things. Trying to see what the community and kids like. So
Great. That's exciting. That's exciting.
And I don't know, we did get feedback on the Nature and Neighborhoods grant.
I haven't told him yet because it's not final, but go for it.
Well, we have been recommended for approval, so it's going to go to the Metro Council for
On the 26th?
the 26th, yep.
So that's 350,000 that would go towards our works.
And the state grant, you thought at some point we'd need to take people to some state
It's a
parks
Zoom
meeting?
Zoom meeting, Zoom on live. They wanted sort of limited participation.
Oh,
So I think that's scheduled for the 26th of June. Yeah, and then we're waiting on that other grant, and that's a $300,000 grant. So hopefully soon after those presentations, we'll find something out.
All right. Any other questions for him on parks? All right, thank you.
Yep.
All right, back to reporting out for meetings. Is there anything else?
That's it.
for Barb?
That's all.
Anything else you want to report out on? Nope. Okay. Counselor Massey, you got any meetings to report on?
Yeah, the Watershed Council, the big thing going on there is the sediment testing. I haven't, have the boats gone in yet?
They have not.
They've not, but
We're expecting them in the next 2 weeks.
yeah, that's what I'm thinking. So at any rate, they have to put in some fairly large boats into Kellogg Lake. They're like 40 feet. They put them in at June because that's sort of the high water mark, and the water's not that deep to begin with, so they want to keep bottoming out to the greatest extent possible, and hopefully they'll keep floating. But they have to have a fairly large, stable boat in there to do these core samples that will, go down to about 40 feet below the lake bed there. So that's a big one coming up. They have an intern coming in to work with the Watershed Council, who's going to primarily be engaged with Neil on developing an engagement plan for the next couple of years. And, out of the blue, there's some good things that come. They received a $30,000 anonymous donation.
Wow.
Big check that they're going to apply toward the project management that had that was something that they looked at. They had to fill some money in from somewhere. And so that's a nice fill in. Big thing they're working on in the next few months is, they have to draft a whole series of agreements to administer the NOAA $15 million grant with all of the stakeholders, including the city and that kind of thing. And so think of them kind of like as a nonprofit federal IGA sort of thing. And so there's about half a dozen of those that have to be drafted. They're going to be putting their budget together in July, and they're going to be starting the strategic plan for the next year as well. So they made around $3,000 in their native plant sales, so they're got a nice little kick there. And have another meeting in a couple of weeks, and the Water Consortium meets tomorrow night.
Well, and in addition to the intern, they're looking now for an AmeriCorps staffer, and there's an application process open. I think maybe
That is the
everybody
intern.
got. Well, that's a paid. That's more than an intern, but okay.
Yeah, it's the same person.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay. Okay. Well, people, I think Neil sent that around to everyone, but if not, if you know anybody who might be in, that's a great entry level kind of job for someone who wants to work in the environmental field. That's a good, lots of Johnson Creek Watersheds Council staff is ex-AmeriCorps, members. Anyway, so if anybody knows anyone who might be interested, I've got the info if you don't.
There's also no age
Yeah, it's
requirement
not
for it.
necessarily.
Yeah, so it doesn't have to be like a college student. It could be someone who's retired who wants to work on that topic too. So it was pretty exciting about AmeriCorps.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. Not just new grads. Okay, Counselor Koster-Body, you got any meetings to report
No,
on?
I actually have a meeting tomorrow morning.
Okay,
CAB meeting is tomorrow.
Pardon?
CAP Citizen Advisory Board
Oh, okay.
tomorrow morning.
Okay, well, I have a couple of updates. This weekend was the C4 retreat. So it's the Clackamas County Coordinating Committee. This is the organization that advises the metro policy committees and has a lot of policy conversation around land use, transportation, housing, and as of late, homelessness. So I think it's probably important to just specify that C4 has cities that are within the urban growth boundary, of which we're one, and then there's rural communities. And there are also representatives from community planning organizations. So there's a whole mix of folks, a lot of different interests and agendas. And so the topics that were addressed at the retreat were housing and homelessness in the first session, and then transportation tolling in the second session. All of the transcription from the retreat will be available for C4's July meeting. And so when that becomes available, I'm happy to forward it around to folks. Couple of high-level snippets that might be of interest. This quote or this percentage really caught me off guard. In Oregon, 90% of homeowners have an interest rate below the current rate. So like, if the current rate is, what is 6 now, then 90% of homeowners in Oregon don't have that financial incentive to sell, buy another house. They might be making those decisions based on other variables in their life. The housing conversation was not limited to homeownership, but that one really that was pretty striking. We did have a good conversation about affordable housing development, what it looks like from a city perspective, what it also looks like through the perspective of the SHS funds and the affordable housing bond. So they gave an update on where we're at with the build out of affordable housing from the Metro bond, and then a preview that there will be a campaign launching soon for a second affordable housing bond. So, and then we had, I have tons to share, which I will not tonight, about housing. I see you laughing. One of the things that I will share, however, is that I made a recommendation. They asked, what do you want us to do? How can the county help? So I made a recommendation that that the county consider adding to their legislative agenda for next year a change for manufactured structures and the property tax that are that's levied on those structures. So from my perspective, I see that as a housing stabilization and preservation strategy, and to the extent that we have a lot of manufactured homes around here, whether we're in the city limits or not, I feel like that's an affordability strategy that we can get on board with helping with the county. Other counties have done this. And so basically what that would mean is you can raise the ceiling of a tax exemption for a manufactured structure. If I'm living in a mobile home and it's valued at $36,000 and I'm eligible for an exemption of that amount, and then the next assessment comes out and it's valued at $36,001. The current setup is that Clackamas County doesn't have the local authority to adjust that ceiling for property tax exemption. So a change legislatively would allow them to be able to do that, but we can also lobby them to change the ratio so that instead of being taxed on the entire amount, once you pop up above that ceiling, then you might be just taxed on the amount that is above the ceiling. So those are two fixes that I think would be really advantageous for a lot of communities across Clackamas County. They wrote it down, and that's something that I'd like to commit to working on longer term. For the tolling discussion, so I think, does everyone know that there's a pause on tolling until 2026. ODOT, however, is not using the word pause. They're doing work behind the scenes, but they're not seeing this as a hard stop. They're also not preferring the word mitigation strategy when you're looking at traffic that would be pushed off of the freeways or would divert going into side streets. So several of these things, are problematic for cities that have their boundaries directly adjacent to 205. And while we're kind of sheltered from some of that, we live in a pretty connected transportation infrastructure. So they had some conversation about what the group values were around tolling. And as you might imagine, those vary pretty widely amongst folks. But overall, there's an interest in having unified messaging as we move toward 2026. I think that, that's going to come sooner than later. So they'll have a draft on some of the feedback specifically that was put out there in the July meeting, and then I can forward that. They're also looking at what the relational and operational deliverables might look like in the short term so that we can continue to encourage ODOT to be at the table and talk about tolling, even if we have this pause. There's a ton in there, but I'll share more as it becomes available. And the other thing is that there's a subcommittee of C4. Actually, it's an ODOT subcommittee that's looking at diversion. And I think the thought there is that would change, the topic of that subcommittee would change to focus on tolling almost exclusively. So I might pop into a couple of those meetings and see if there's anything that would be helpful for us to know. And that is it.
On the topic of manufactured homes, was there any talk about giving those folks who own their manufactured home an opportunity to buy the property? Like all those groups, it's a co-op, right?
Like a co-op model.
Yeah.
There wasn't in the meeting, but I would be very excited to have that conversation with them. Yeah.
I mean, didn't the state pass a law about that a couple of years ago sort of I guess it's a right of first refusal kind of law.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think it allows more opportunity for that, but it's such a financial hurdle for residents to organize around and have access to that information. So it might be worth maybe we can have a follow-up conversation maybe about SHS funds and if there's potential, it's not just funding for renters. It can also be used for stabilization strategies for, preventing homelessness. And I made it very clear, the mayor was there for that day. I feel like I made it really clear that our interest is about, making sure that we can maintain the affordability of residents while also embracing the growth that we're seeing in Milwaukie, which is a challenge, and a challenge that can't often occur without some type of subsidy. But that, at the best possible case, you have somebody who is, this is the best worst case, right? It's somebody who's displaced to someplace outside of Milwaukie. The worst case is that you're actually contributing to homelessness here right in Milwaukie. So still lots to talk about there. The only other thing is not related to C4. I serve on the Public Health Advisory Council for the county, and they're accepting applications for folks who want to be trained to measure inclement weather in the coming months. I think it's in July that they're looking for this. And so if anybody's interested, I can send that information. So basically, you would be trained and equipped with a temperature measure, and then that would attach to your vehicle, and you would go out on a certain route, yeah, and start to measure what the heat index would look like. So that work is expanding into Clackamas County, and they're paying, I think it's $100 per shift for that.
That might be something to share on social media. There might be some people Yeah, send a link for that, yeah.
Sounds good.
I did go to the C4 retreat for the most of the first day, although I had to leave before the last sort of combo meeting where they brought it all to conclusion to get back for First Friday. But I did leave some suggestions on a board on the side, so I'll be curious when you get the notes whether they made it into there. Yeah, I did want to note, I sat on a table there that did mental health and addiction issues, and it was only like a 20-minute brainstorming. It wasn't a very long part of the agenda, but one of the things people said was, the services have to be transit accessible. And then I come home and read the headline about the, health, the county's mental health clinics going into our just east of Milwaukie in a place that is not transit accessible. I have been in contact. It does have a bus that runs in the morning and in the evening, like a commuter bus. It runs till like 9:30 and starts at 3:30 or something. I have been in touch with John Serra from TriMet, and they were not aware that the county was putting its mental health clinic there. But he is starting the conversation on whether there's any chance of, that bus was slated at some point to become a all-day bus. So he's trying to suss out whether that can be expedited and sort of get info from the county about, the amount of service they think it will need. So at least that conversation's starting. It's unfortunate the county didn't have that before they bought the property.
Thank you for reaching out to him.
Yeah, no, I
great.
appreciate it. I was happy to do it. Okay, we have no other.
I have one.
Okay, yeah.
Ooh, everybody's giving me the eye, but this is a really good one. Hit it, Scott. This is the poster that has been selected for Milwaukie Pride. And while I am not on the organizing committee, you will have to connect with our great friend Kathy Heisey if you have specific questions. All the deets are there as shared earlier in our proclamation discussion. But the coolest part about this is that it was designed by students at RAL.
Oh, nice. Nice. Well, and I did invite Kathy to come tonight, but she was out of town and unable to come tonight. So that's cool.
They have a top three.
Yeah.
If anybody's interested in looking at the top three posters.
This is really nice. That's a really cool one.
Yeah. I didn't. Oh, yeah. Yeah, there's one that's like retro inspired. And yeah, it's pretty neat. Awesome. I told you it was worth it.
Okay, if no other committee reports, I will read the executive session notice and then we will adjourn and go into executive session. So after the regular session, council will meet in executive session pursuant to Oregon Revised Statute 192.6602H to consult with counsel concerning the legal rights and duties of a public body with regard to current litigation or litigation likely to be filed. And with that, I will call
I move to adjourn.
Oh, there we go.
I second.
We've been moved and seconded that we adjourn. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? None heard. We are adjourned from the regular session.